let's talk about audience surveys. Why are these important? Let's take podcasting and pretend it's something else. Let's pretend it's a restaurant. Would you go, I'm opening up Dave's restaurant, eat my food, right? Wouldn't you probably have somebody go, oh man, this is the best food I've ever eaten. Have you ever thought of, selling this? There's a local restaurant here in Akron, Ohio that everybody loves their salad dressing to the point that they finally started selling it. And so that's a good inclination that somebody wants your product when people are going, I will give you money if you just make this available. And so if you think about a musician, they usually like practice a lot in the basement, and then they have some friends over, hopefully that will tell them, hey, this is good or it's not good. So that's really, we could go on and on. I mean, authors have rough drafts, athletes have preseason. There's all sorts of things before you put your stuff out there. And then once it's out there, you need someone to say, yes, this is exactly what I want. Now, the other thing you want to do, many moons ago, I worked in the corporate world, and anytime marketing got bored, they would say, hey, let's do an audience survey, because it was something to do. Let's do an audience survey. And I'd be like, okay, great. What are we doing with the results? Like, before we go making a survey, what are we doing with the results? Because one of the worst things you can do is ask your audience, what do you want? And they all say shorter shows. And you go, okay, and make it longer. Like, they're not going to really be super happy about that. Now, part of this is, as I always say, you need to know your why, you need to know your who, and the what is where this overlaps. What can I talk about to educate or entertain the who while moving them towards my why? And there are times when you will get people that will give you an answer like make your show longer, and yet it's called 2-minute tips. And you're like, okay, I don't think you got the main gist of the show. It's 2 minutes. And they're like, it should be longer. Well, it's 2 minutes tips. So it's always going to be. So that person has a name, and that is not your target audience. So keep that in mind. By knowing your why, you can figure out, is this person my target audience? And if they are, then you might want to go, do they have a point? But you really want to think about, hey, before I do this survey, what am I trying to learn? And so keep that in mind. And then what's great about it is you can have a survey and do one for what do you want to hear? We did one for podcastwebsitetips.com. In fact, let me put this in the link if you want to go over to podcastwebsitetips.com/survey. I'm going to click that link myself. It will basically take you to a survey, or so I hope. And that's one we did when we first started, to say, what do you want on a show called Podcast Website Tips? Because we kind of figured we'd talk about tips for people with a podcast website, because we're creative like that. And so again, you kind of have to figure out, what do you want from this? And then that it helps to pick the questions when you know who your audience is. So for example, if the goal is, I want to get advertising for my show, well, then you have to know, what are the advertisers going to want to know? Well, they're going to want to know your age group, your sex, your income level, if you have any kids. Sometimes, and you'll see where you can add your own questions. A really fun question is, what was the last thing you bought? And just leave it open like that. Or if you wanted to, you could say, what was the last thing you bought over $200? And then you might see where, wow, there are a lot of people in my, audience that are buying blank. Maybe that would be a good sponsor, because you can show that to the sponsor. Hey, I just had 15 people out of my audience of X amount of people bought your product. why don't we dump some gas on that and you sponsor the show and I'll talk about it all day long, assuming A, it's a good product and it's not going to tarnish your awesome reputation, and B, you like the product. Never ever sell out to just get the big bucks. That's the one thing that you have to keep in mind. So before the survey, what do I want to learn? Not just I'm doing a survey because Dave said I wanted to do a survey. So what I'd love to know is, and there's no shame in this, if you haven't done a survey, why not? I'd love to know, because maybe you're just new and you don't know how or whatever, but we're going to talk about that as we go along. Um, the survey that we're going to look at today is from the book The Audience is Listening by Tom Webster, a really good book. Like really good. Even if you're like, look, Dave, I don't have Podpage. Well, then get this book. And if you do have Podpage, get this book. It's really good. I joked with Tom. I said you should have called it "Your Baby Is Ugly," because that's kind of what he's saying. But if you think about it, when you first start out, in some cases, your baby is ugly. Rough drafts for an author are not great. If you've ever sat through a third grade orchestra concert, not great. Nothing better than the dreidel song by a group of 15 violin. Like, okay, it's better than it was, but still not quite ready for prime time. The other book I have there is The Mom Test, and this is a book by a guy named Rob Fitzpatrick. The beautiful thing is both of these, actually, if you get them on Audible, are read by the author. I love that. And the mom test is something I say all the time. Go get some feedback from someone not named mom. And he talks about, actually, and this is a great, if you want to do the ultimate audience survey, have a Zoom call one-on-one with audience members. I did that once by accident. In fact, I think that's my next slide. Yep. My best worst mistake is I had set up, I would forget what I was using for my newsletter. And I set it up to basically send out, I thought I had it filtered so it would only send to 10 random people. And in a nutshell, instead of sending it to 10, it went out to my entire list, which was kind of huge at the time. And it said, hey, I'm doing some research. I want to, find out what you guys need. And I would love to spend like 15 minutes with you. And if you don't mind, just click this link and schedule a time. And so for 2 weeks straight, back to back to back to back to back meetings. And it was an awesome mistake because it did tie up a lot. But I also really got to know my audience and what they were looking for, and what worked and what didn't. If you ever have the opportunity to be face to face with someone from your audience, ask them, like, why do you listen? And they'll be very happy to say, oh man, I always learn something and you're funny and it's entertaining. I like the way you do that. Oh, great. And then ask them, great, is there anything I could do better? And then shut up. And there's this thing called the awkward pause. And they go, what? And you're like, no, is there something I could do better or something that's kind of annoying? And there's this awkward pause. And many times they will kind of cheap out and go, no, really, I love the whole thing. And you just go, but if you get a chance and you let that awkward pause get really awkward, they will then give you something. In some cases, I remember somebody once. At one point, I had a cat that kept interrupting my show, and so I quit editing it out. And he was like, "I'm not a fan of Bernie the cat." And I'm like, "Oh," and which was weird. It was a very dividing thing. Wes says yes. It's even worse on flutes. Yes, talking about those childhood orchestras. So when it comes to, so don't be afraid to get in front of your audience. It's one of the things I love about Podpage. We don't have a problem at all just getting in front of our customers. So let's go and play with the survey. And that takes us over to, well, we're going to do this instead. There we go. All right. So you should see Podpage at this point. Let me squeeze back over here. Yep, there we are. Good. All right. So, first things first, where is it, Dave? And if I go to pages, and then, basically we have pages, you have design, you have grow. We're looking for, as you might imagine, since we're trying to connect with our audience, it's under connect. So we're going to come down and you'll see where it says listener survey. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one that has some data in it. Podcast website tips, maybe you just sign that out. If so, we'll look at that in just a second, but I know what's in this one. So you can see where I've made a survey. So I'm just going to briefly show you what this looks like after you've done the survey, and then we'll talk about how do I set one up. So you can see here, I've got 32 responses, and I can see how often do you listen, how long you've been listening. So I'm happy that a lot of my audience has been around for more than 5 years. How did you first discover? Boy, is this a good one. And you can see what I love is it's kind of all over the place. It'd be even better if it was like one big piece, because then I could say, oh, I just need to do that one thing. But no, they're scattered throughout. Do you think it should be longer, shorter, or the same length? So they're all kind of like, hey, we're pretty good with the way it is. Do you follow the school of podcasting? Most of them do. And then you get into, I'm asking them, why do you feel this way? Is there anything else you'd like to mention about the school of podcasting? So I got a lot of interesting feedback in there. Down here, besides the school of podcasting, approximately, these are the custom questions I kind of threw in here. What other shows do you listen to? Now, the reason I asked this question is these might be opportunities to network with these shows. If my audience is already listening to them, why not? They probably have a similar audience. Do you use any of these current services? Now, the fun thing is it's Facebook looks to be number one, and Reddit, and let's see what else. But I noticed originally, you'll see where LinkedIn is number 2 for me. And when the last time I looked at this, LinkedIn was number 1. And ask me where I spend the least amount of time, and the answer would be LinkedIn. So what did I learn from this survey? I'm not hanging out where my audience is. And so if I really want to engage my audience, I should spend more time on LinkedIn. I love the fact that we don't give ranges, like how old are you? So I can see exactly how old people are, their gender, which one best describes you. And then again, household income is really only if you're going to be doing advertising. I could really care less how much money you make. What is the highest level of education, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to stop there because below that we get into people's emails. But you can export this up here. You'll see there's this little button here, and there's also a big button here that says export responses. So if you're an Excel nerd and you want to really crunch these numbers, you can go to town in Excel. But if I wanted to set one up, let me switch over here to a fake show. And I could say, hey, again, it's under Connect. And then I say I want to do a listener survey. And so I would like to make a new listener survey. And when you do this, I'm going to call this, listener survey summer 2025. And when I click on save, what we have is first it says, hey, this isn't open. Nobody can answer any questions on this. And so I could come down, and if you want, you can add a thing like, hey, thanks so much for, we have some default script here, but I'm just trying to make the show better. If you explain to people how they are going to benefit by filling out this survey. If you go back to the old movie, it's sad to say it's an old movie, but it is. Jerry Maguire, help me, help you, right? So that's kind of what we're doing here. If you want to, you can give away a prize, or if anyone that fills out the survey gets my super secret PDF with secrets of such and such, you can do this. So down here, you'll see where it says collect responses. So if I do that, people can answer it. And I would like to be notified when somebody fills this out. So if I click on save, that is now off and to the races. Now, the questions by default are all on. And if you want them all on, you can. But if you want, you can just come in here and say, well, I definitely want this one. How often do you listen? How long have you been listening? How did you first discover? That's a good one. Maybe how soon? And you're like, I don't really care how soon or not, but you get the idea. You leave the ones on that you want left on, the ones you really don't care about. If you're like, that one's not really that, I'll turn that one off as well. You keep the ones you want, you turn off the ones you don't. So if I'm not really interested in the platform or what places do you ever listen to the show? So if you're trying to figure out where they are, you know, and these again are coming from the book The Audience is Listening by Tom Webster. So you can again turn on whichever ones you want. I'm just randomly clicking at this point. And then when you get to the bottom, you can come down here and add your own. So what is the, velocity of a, swallow? Or what is your favorite color or anything else from Monty Python? You could put that down here and click save. And at that point, you have an incentive tab. So this is where you can say, hey, thanks so much for filling out the survey. By, chiming in, we help to make the show better for you. Here's the super top secret PDF that will teach you how to make $1 million in 4 cents. And yeah, so you can upload your PDF there. Or let's say you wanted them to go someplace. You could say, hey, thanks so much for filling out the survey. As a thankful, as my way of saying thanks, please visit me over at the super secret website and put the link up here in the thank you message. So if you don't want to give them incentive, you could. And then over here, we have our responses. So obviously, as I just made this, we do not have any responses yet. So it's super simple to do. And then if you're using something like Captivate or Buzzsprout or any tool that has dynamic properties, you could easily add, there's pre-roll, there's mid-roll, and there's post-roll. And so, for example, you might have a post-roll that says, hey, you made it to the end of the episode and you're probably looking for something to do or maybe listen to another episode. Before you do that, go to mywebsite.com/survey, because again, we made that really easy to remember URL, and fill out the survey. I really would appreciate it, and it helps me make the show better for you. And anyone that signs up gets the super duper super jumbo deluxe PDF that will help you save the world and rid the world of cancer and invent sliced bread. It's all there at mywebsite.com/survey. So that could be the post roll. Pre-roll, if you're going to do something, make it quick. Just like, hey, everybody, even though I hate that, that's very YouTubey. You could say, hey, before I get started, do me a favor. Go to mywebsite.com/survey so I can make the show better. Bing. Get in and get out. Because you will find that even though you're not selling anything, you're just trying to make your show better, any kind of pre-roll that isn't getting to the topic. So your topic said interview with Paul McCartney, interview with Kelly Clarkson. And people are like, I love Kelly. And they hit play and they hear, hey, before the show starts, it's like, that's got to be like really quick or really, really important, because you're just going to see your stats where you can see how far people listen. It's just going to go woo, because they want to hear Kelly Clarkson or whoever it is. So keep that in mind if you're going to do a pre-roll. For me, my favorite place is somewhere in the middle for any kind of call to action, whether it's buy my stuff or join my newsletter or fill out my survey. I like to do my stuff in the middle, because by that time they're on the hiking trail, they've already hit play, and they've put the phone in their pocket. So now when you start to talk about the survey, they got to pull it out and hit fast forward. It's a little harder to do that, but you will see if you look at your stats that at times, people will skip that stuff. But if it's in the middle and they're driving and they're like, oh, I don't want to really try to hit skip now because I'll hit the car in front of me. Mid-roll seem to perform a little better. And as always, your mileage may vary. So keep that in mind. But you can see where it's super simple to do that. Then let it go for a while. It's one of those things that I should probably say this, that when you ask people, even though you go, this is really going to benefit you, that they still won't fill out the survey. Or what they've done, because your audience is filled with great people, is they're going to do it later and then they forget. And so even though we've given them that super easy to remember link of your website, whatever it is, .com, .dent, whatever, your website / survey, they're going to forget. So I want to say that if you can get 3% of your audience to actually respond, you're doing about right. 5% would be amazing, but you have to nudge them a lot. It's not a case where, hey, it's the first week of June and we're halfway through the year, and I'm just want to make sure that I'm giving you the best content I can. So if you could do me a favor and go to mywebsite.com/survey, fill that out. It helps us make the show better for you. If you do that once and then never mention it again, it's not. There's a I heard a study, they said that if they wanted to say something to church going people, that you would have to repeat it 3 weeks in a row to have everybody hear it, because not everybody shows up every week. And that's kind of the same thing, maybe if we consider your show church, right? I'm going to church to learn how to walk in fitness and use, Instagram or whatever your show is about. Not everybody listens to every episode, and I realize that is blasphemy. Oh, what do you mean? How dare you insinuate that not everybody watches everything? But it's true. So you might need to repeat that a bit. And that's where the dynamic content really comes in handy, because you can put it in there. You can also swap it out. That's another nice thing about it. When you record a spot and then it's in every episode, your audience is going to get really tired of hearing you talk about that. If it's the exact same thing that you said last time, and it's, yes, please fill out my survey. Yeah, swap that thing out. Otherwise, they get a little bored. So, nobody has answered, I don't think, in the chat room why they didn't do a survey yet. Because I would love to hear it. Because everybody goes, oh, yeah, that'd be a great idea. Now, can I answer part of that? Part of that, I think, is we work hard on our episodes. We do. And so the last thing we want to do is have somebody go, we're like, oh, but I worked so hard. And then, but realize we are too close to our own content. I will give you an example. The fabulous Kim Newlove, who does a Perrysburg podcast as well as the Pharmacist Voice, sent me a email, and it said, Dave, do you realize you have a typo in your show? To which I replied, which one? I have about 4. And she said, the School of Podcasting. And I said, oh, okay. Which episode? And she said, no, it's in the show. And I said, the School of Podcasting? And she goes, yes. And I walked over and I looked, and it said School of Podcasting, plan, launch, grow, and monetize. Monetize the show. I had forgotten an E. And so you need people to go, hey, Dave, you got broccoli in your teeth. Hey, there's a typo. Or, hey, did you know you had 10 seconds of nothing in the middle? Or, I don't know, I'm kind of tired of hearing the same ad. Or, I don't know, I never listened to the end because it's this, it's that. Or I've sent email to the one and only Adam Curry. I said, you guys spend about 5 to 10 minutes talking about the artwork of the show, and I don't really look at it. It's in my pocket. And he was like, well, I appreciate the feedback, but so keep that in mind. Family tree, food and stores. I don't want to ask questions where people will say, what, are you kidding? That's a dumb question. I'll never listen again. Well, I would ask what the question is. Don't ask silly questions then. But a lot of times you're just asking, like, my favorite thing, if anybody ever sends you an email, I've been lucky. I've been on a roll lately. It's one of my favorite metrics, which is unprovoked listener email. So you put out the episode, you did a little promoting, you wake up on the next day and somebody says, hey, that was a really good show. And you're like, wow, that's really cool. And the last 2 episodes, I've had a bit more of that than I usually do. And when somebody does that to me, the first thing I do is say, thank you so much for listening. And then I always reply with, is there something you would like to hear on the show? To which they always say, Dave, you have 900 episodes. You've probably already talked about it. To which I then say, no, really, seriously, what would you like to hear on the show? And you've got your audience right there. So, yeah, is the banner behind me correct? I hope so. Planned launch. Yeah. See, no monetize in that one, Randy. That would be sad. Very much so. So we're getting some answers here. Ralph, you can find him over at Financially Confident Christian. Survey last fall even offered an Amazon card drawing for people, and I received about 28 surveys. Again, it's kind of it can be a little disheartening because you don't get, you have maybe a couple hundred listeners and you get six. So keep that in mind. And then you do have to remember that, again, the good news is if they're doing that, they're a podcast listener. I like to start with my podcast because those are the people that are listening to the podcast. Then, after what I feel is enough time for anybody that was going to answer is probably answered at this point, I might send it out to my newsletter to say, hey, how's this working? And that's where I might have a question. Do you listen to my podcast? That would be good. I did one time, I do a show on Saturdays called Ask the Podcast Coach. And it was just kind of created originally because I wanted to play with Blog Talk Radio. And it took me about a week to figure out, wow, that's not a good platform. And after that, it was just, well, I'll just do it to hand out free podcast consulting. And we had somebody send in, it was like 2.5 pages. And they had done lots of research. It was like, hey, on March 22nd at the 18-minute mark, you and Jim said this. And then later in August, you said this and did it. And then he said, what you should do is bring on guests and ask them questions and do surveys and then do this. And everything he wanted were not bad suggestions, except it's called Ask the Podcast Coach. It was supposed to be a call-in show, and we realized it took me a while, but my audience didn't want to call in. They want to leave their questions via a chat. But he had great suggestions if I was doing an interview show, but I'm not doing an interview show. So keep that in mind, that there are going to be some people that aren't your target audience when it comes to, leaving the messages and stuff. Ralph says, I think I have reverse whatever it is camera settings on Restream. It could be because it looks fine on my screen, but who knows? If not, it's just the so, which is my favorite place to learn how to podcast. Any other questions before we move along? We do have one thing I wanted to show here. That's not really brand new in Podpage. We can open it up to any question. I mean, it doesn't have to be about surveys, but let me do this while we're slowly changing gears. I'm going to come back here. And if you're an elite member, you can tweak your SEO settings for episodes. And again, this is one of the beautiful things about audience feedback is we had audience feedback that said, hey, like it seems when I'm tweaking my SEO for episodes that I kind of go to the SEO thing and it goes, hey, this is too long. And then I have to go to the episode and make it shorter. And then I click save and I go back to the SEO thing and it says, hey, you don't have a thingamabob. And you go, oh, no thingamabob. Holy cow. You go back to the episode and you put in a thingamabob. And you're like, okay. And then you save it and you go, a lot of back and forth. And somebody said, hey, you know what? That's a lot of back and forth. And Brendan Mulligan, the founder and lead developer at Podpage, said, you know what? They got a point. And so what we've done, if I switch over here, is if I go to, I guess it doesn't matter. I'm in my fake show again. So I'll go over here to episodes and episode list. And you'll see here where it gives you a score. Like this one was a 12 and 10. And you can get up to 18 if you tweak things. Now, 10 and 12 is not awful, but you could get things higher. So what I wanted to point out, and I'll just do this one just because it's right here at the top, is you can see it's saying, hey, here's a lot of times, in fact, let me get rid of that. If I go, hey, there's no this, it's saying my character length, let's make it too long. But you get the point here is the fact that I can adjust this right here. And so if I click on save, now we'll probably go down to 8. Okay, we're down to 10. So I could say, hey, this whatever the keyword was here, taking breaks. So I'll say taking breaks in podcasting, and I'll click on save. So now my little score will probably go up by a few. And here, this is saying this is great, but it used to be a lot of times you'll be doing something and your URL is this dash word dash that dash you dash put dash into dash the dash title. So your URL is really long. And so now you can go into here and simply change that URL. And behind the scenes, Podpage makes it so that you're not breaking, like if you've shared this on social already, we make it so that it goes to our short link, not the actual URL. So you can easily change that here now. You don't have to go to the episode. And then likewise down here, your title tag. So if this was again, taking break in podcasting, I might just cheat and copy and paste that here, because that's the title that's going to show up in Google. And then down here, your description should have your keywords in there. But as you can see, it gets cut off at 165 characters. And so what Podpage typically does is just use your first paragraph and it puts it in there. Well, that may or may not have your keywords, and there just may be a way that you could tweak that. Well, again, in the past, you kind of had to either do this here or go back to the episode. You can all do it here. The only thing I could think of would be this. If it says here, I know there's one where it's like, it should be in the first paragraph. Yeah, this one. So your first paragraph is not here. That one you'd have to go back to the episode. But that's just something that we just recently, it's not a huge deal. It's just a minor tweak just to make that a little easier based on, again, you guessed it, audience feedback. So, and Ralph says the top score is 19. So that's when you do the Super Jumbo Deluxe. And I believe if you do the Hokey Pokey and turn yourself around, you can get up to 19. So there we go. Excellent. Any other questions here as we got time to do just an open Q&A. Hope you're enjoying your summer. I know my air conditioning is off and my lights are on, and I'm like, I'm starting to sweat. Miss Eileen, love Miss Eileen, says, I noticed we can edit the URL and the SEO report now. Yes, that is something that we just updated. Some other quick things that I will show you. And again, these aren't really like, we added some icing to the cake. So let me go back here. Another one is when you're trying to figure out how you want your episodes to show up. So if I go here to pages and home and click on edit the page, and over here, you will see, well, for your featured episodes, it shows you. And I'm like, oh, I don't really like, I just wanted like pictures and maybe the title. You'll see here where you have card grid, and then you have not just the names of what these are, but little pictures. So if I just wanted a picture, my artwork, and the title, I could choose this one because you can see there's the picture, there's the title, and presto, there it is. And you also notice that it keeps scrolling down to the part you're talking about. If I wanted, just the boxes, there's that. If I wanted the boxes and a play button, there we go, which I think is what I had before. But I go, you know what? Let's just do this. So, or if you don't want it at all, you could turn that off right here, as always. So that is kind of new. You will see that. And I think this isn't really new. But if you go to the homepage feed, and here again, I can pick, how do I want this laid out? You can pick, do I want episodes? Do I want my blog posts or videos? So we have people that are using YouTube. And technically, of course, technically speaking, YouTube is not a podcast, but you could have your videos on the front page and it would look like a podcast. And so if we scroll down here, if you haven't played with the newsletter sign up, that is new. It's now a section at the bottom, which I don't have anything in there just yet. So that's a little easier if you're trying to get your episode on the front page. And then the other thing I forgot to mention when we're in the homepage header is the achievement badge. So I could go here, and right now I have top 5 show in marketing on Good Pods. And I made the text color black and the back of the background color yellow. So it shows right above your title here. So if you're wanting to say, winner of technology award in women's podcast 2025, or number one show with a host named Chris Stone, you could put that there. Anything you want. It's the achievement badge, which is not to be confused with the announcement bar. The announcement bar is the gizmo, this little thing right at the top. So a lot of authors love this thing because it's be like, pre-order the book now. And so they'll put that text here, and then they'll put a link to the the book on Amazon or whatever they're doing. So those are just a couple quick things that we've changed. We are sniffing just we are sniffing the idea of for times when we're not there live, turning on we use Intercom's AI chatbot, but we're being very picky about that because I know a lot of people really hate AI chatbots. And we're like, well, we're testing it. Like I asked it a question yesterday and it was completely wrong. And I went, no, we're not turning this on. Ralph says, when I change the URL, we'll have to test this. It's still a broken link in social media for me. I'm speaking directly about Facebook. I'll never be able to get that to work after changing the URL. Send that in to support@podpage.com, and we'll take a peek at that, because I was pretty sure that Brennan put it so that especially social stuff was using the short link, which is typically your episode number. So if you put in episode number 136, it'd be yourwebsite.com/136. And that way, if you change the URL behind the scenes, the short link would know to update that. So please send that in. That's not something we want happening. Instant feedback from Ralph. Podpage is great. I even have been able to create new landing pages using AI and just copy the HTML into Podpage, and it works great. One of the things I love about it is that we don't limit you. I used and there's nothing wrong with this service. I used a service for kind of hosting courses and such called Podia. And it's great if everything you want to do is in Podia. And I was like, well, no, I want to have this little thing pop up that says, Greg in Indiana just bought this an hour ago. And you had to put some script in, a place in your website. And they were like, nope, if it's not in Podia. And then they said, oh, if you buy our Super Jumbo Deluxe at a yearly thing, then you could maybe do it. And so I did, even though I wasn't happy about it, and I still couldn't put the code in. So that was the end of me. Again, great service as long as everything you want to do. But with Podpage, you can really add all sorts of stuff to it. So I'll have to let's see if I do this, because you guys can see that screen. I will do, or actually, let me go back here. I will get the screen up and then I will share it. We'll do it that way. Here we go. I live in Akron, Ohio. Me and LeBron James hanging out, and I'm going to stop that screen share and start this screen share. And so one of the things I wanted was an events calendar. And so if I go over to events, you'll see that Cruise into Summer is today, and then a comedian, and then the Almond Betts brand, and Ryan Adams, and Collective Soul, and all sorts of people are coming. Well, this isn't a Podpage thing, because not everybody needs an events calendar. And so I went over to, it's a really cool site called elfsite.com. And they have all sorts of stuff that, except I spelled it wrong, except that opened in a new window, and I bet you can't see that now. I have to go back here. I will double check in 2 seconds here. Yep, good. Um, but they have all sorts of widgets. Like somebody was asking about a carousel widget for images and things like that. And you can easily come in and like you just set it up and copy a small bit of code and paste it into your website and you're good to go. And so here again, where if we do that, there we go. We don't limit you. There are, I'm sure there's a limit somewhere. Brendan's like, oh, they can't do everything, but I haven't run into it yet. So if you need to do something in Podpage that's not in Podpage, that's a pretty handy site. And so there's all sorts. I have numerous people that build landing pages into Podpage because you can come in, since Ralph brought that up. If I go back to here and instead I'm going to do this and then share this screen. There we go. Under pages, you can come in and say, hey, I would like to, under more pages, here's in some cases, right, just custom pages or anything else you want, but I'll say, hey, I want to make a custom page and I could name this whatever I want. So I could say, my new product. And then if you wanted to, one of the things, there's a video on this on our YouTube channel, whereas if I wanted to have, let's say, I'm just going to go here and say, give me a table with 2 rows and 3 columns. Well, now this is here. And if I wanted to, I can come over here and say, let me upload an image of some sort. And so I will go here and I think this is it. Nope. It's the one creatively named headshot that would be my headshot. So now I can come in here and I'll leave that at 400 by 400. I can drag this over. I've got my 3 columns here, but if I wanted to, you can I'll put words here. If I wanted to, I could put another picture over here. And you basically can come in here and add things and kind of space them using tables. And you're like, yeah, but Dave, you got these silly little lines everywhere. I don't really like the lines. Well, I could click here and say, hey, show me table. First, I got to be in it, I guess. That would help. And go down to table properties and say, hey, can we get rid of the border? And when I make that 0, we can see them as little dotted lines now, but on the page, those would be completely invisible. So you can really customize that, and you don't always have to have your episodes on the front page. If I go to podcastconsultant.com, that is one where I'm primarily promoting my services. So here's a table that I just mentioned, and they've got links, and there's our fun-filled pop-up. And then it's all about, look at Dave and how I can help you. And then there's my newsletter. So my episodes are still here. They're just at the top because, I've got the big button here. But in some cases, you have to ask the question, is this a business that has a podcast? Or is it a podcast that has a business? So for the first probably 10 years of the School of Podcasting, it was a podcast that had a business. And then a few years back, I was like, no, we're going to promote the business more on the front page. And then if they want to listen, they can. And I've got my follow button and I've got all my episodes here. But that's one of those things where sometimes if you want to promote just more of your business than your podcast, you can do that. So keep that in mind. Here we go. I have a suggestion. We love suggestions at Podpage. How about an enhanced request path for Podpage? I don't know what that means. An enhancement request path. Yeah, I need more info on that, Ralph. Wes White says, I was just getting ready to say something about Elfsight. It worked great with Podia. Yes. Well, see, there you go. If I would have known that before, did it have something that you couldn't do with standard Podia? Yeah, I couldn't add. It's the little button. You've seen them on websites where you'll go to somebody's website and down at the bottom, like right now, it says Dave Jackson, head of podcasting, but it'll pop up and it'll be like, Cynthia in Alberta bought this an hour ago. It was called like proof of concept. I forget what it was, but you had to put a bit of code into this box. Now, this was probably 2.5 years ago, so they might have lightened some of the reins over at Podia since I was there. But I just remember they wouldn't let me do it, and I was like, "But it's JavaScript. It's not." And they're like, "No, sorry." And they like, and then even they said you can if you buy the biggest, most expensive plan, and I did, and I put it, and it didn't work, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we don't allow that." And I was like, "But I'm on the biggest, plan." So, but yeah, Podia was it's a great platform. I moved from there to Zenler, and I just moved from Zenler to Heartbeat. So now my community and my courses are all in one place. So, but and I will say that, Wes, as much as anybody that's doing any kind of courses or community, pick one and stay there, because moving is quite the pain in the rear end, if I do say so myself. So, and whatever you buy. So if you're like, oh man, I found the perfect tool, it does exactly what I want. And the minute you bust out your wallet and you take out your plastic and you buy it, somebody will go, oh, I see you just did this. Did you know about this? It's on AppSumo for a lifetime deal. And it's, and you're like, so you will always, the minute you buy the perfect thing, the cheaper perfect thing will appear. So it's one of those things when when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, however that setting goes. When you buy whatever it is, when you buy the perfect microphone, a cheaper one that sounds better will appear. It's always the case with that. So with that, any other final questions as we start to wrap up? So go out and do a survey, because one of the things I hear the most is, well, my audience isn't growing as fast as I'd like. That's always the thing. It's not that it's not growing, it's not growing as fast as I like. Then maybe it's time for a survey to find out, if you're on the right path. Ralph said he did one earlier. Ralph, did you learn anything from those? Have you changed your show? Because I know you've changed your show a lot over the last couple of months. Was that based on the feedback from your audience? Did they? Because Ralph is one of those guys that's doing a daily show. Makes me tired just thinking about it. But did you get any feedback from your audience that maybe you then put into play? I know I got on Ask the Podcast Coach. I occasionally go right to the edge of being double entendre. And I've had people go, hey, you're almost talking naughty. And I'm like, okay, I won't say booger again. I'm sorry. I thought that was kind of interesting how words are fun. Aren't words fun? Because, man, if you just say, well, I can't say it because I'm on Podpage right now, but if you say anything like that, Ralph is filling me in here. Maybe like a spot where people can make suggestions for enhancements, like a community page, like some other platforms where, oh, okay. So like a roadmap is, I think, what you're looking for. We kind of have that covered. The best thing to do, because like I said, the SEO page has now been updated. Why? Because somebody said, hey, this is kind of wonky. And we looked at it and went, you know what? That is kind of wonky. And so we changed it. So the best thing to do, when I say we are open for suggestions, we're open for suggestions. And when we see enough people go, hey, this is kind of wonky, we will change it. And if it's, even if it's not a bunch of people, if it's wonky and if it's easier, the easier it is to fix. Yeah, Wes, with Podia, I did not know about ElfSite. That was pre my knowledge of ElfSite. So that might have been the case, but I forget what I had. It was something proof, and it was just a bit of JavaScript. So, but if you love Podia, if they had done that, and what's stupid is that's the dumbest feature that I spent hours moving courses and updating affiliates. It's a lot of work to move. So pick that. Yeah, Ralph said he did learn from his survey, but I did get some conflicting answers, which you'll get. You're always going to have that person that wants you to do something that's really not, because they may not know your why, and so they're suggesting something that just doesn't fit with what you're doing. So keep that in mind. So Mark Ronick, having if you haven't heard yet, and you're in, if I remember right, North Carolina, I want to say empowerment podcast event. Put it in the chat room and I'll say it out loud. It's one of my favorite types of events. Nothing against, because I'll be at Podcast Movement. Podpage will be at Podcast Movement, but I love them when they're tiny and there's, not 5,000 people. Those are great, by the way, for networking and meeting everybody in one place. So I know I heard a lot of great feedback from the podcast show in London. We'll be at Podcast Movement in August, but when they're tiny, sometimes I like those. For my personal opinion, I like those a little bit. Ralph is saying, and allow me to set up episodes in advance. We have heard that one. That one's definitely on the list. That is not an easy thing to do. That's why that one hasn't come out yet. So I can do 19-step SEO setup before the meeting. I really would like to be able to do that. Yes, that we have heard you on that. Yes, here we go. Charlotte, the Empowered Podcasting event, September 26th, maybe 150 to 200 people, which is in my book. Wes, please let me say I'm not dissing Podia. I'm saying 2.5 years ago, it didn't do what I wanted it to do, which was stupid, which was one little, not that they were stupid, I was stupid, that I had one little stupid feature go, I got to move. I mean, it was really dumb when I look at it. I do like the blog portion. Yeah, it's a great service. So there's a lot of good ones out there. There's, Teachable, Thinkific, Podia. I've been on all three of those. Zenler, and now I'm on Heartbeat. So excellent. But yeah, anytime you guys have suggestions, send them in to support@podpage.com. We've definitely heard that one, Ralph. And I threw that over to Brendan, and that's when they're hard. Like we just had someone yesterday, and this is not the norm, so let's say that up front. Someone said, hey, I'd like to add a message at the top of the rate page. And if you didn't know that, if you want people to rate your show, just go to podcastwebsitetips.com/rate. See, easy to remember link, reinforces your brand. And somebody said, can we put like our own little message there? And because that's a pre-made Podpage created page, there wasn't any way to edit it. And so I threw it at Brendan. It's a super easy fix. And literally, I don't know, 9 hours later, you can now edit the rate page. You can put a little message there. It's still self-generated because we have links to Apple and Spotify on that. But they're not all that easy, unfortunately. And the ones that are really hard take longer. Somebody said, hey, I'd like to take a survey I did, and I want to do it again next year. Is there a way I can copy the survey and have it wipe out all the answers? And sounds like an easy one to do. So I threw it at Brendan. He goes, man, that's a great idea. But in terms of complexity, that's not as simple as like, well, you just copy and delete and blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, there's a lot more behind the scenes to that. So I guess, Ralph, what you're looking for, and correct me if I'm wrong, you'd like something a little more public so you could see, have you heard me? Is it on the list or something like that? So I think that's something, and I know of a few tools that do that. So, and then people can vote on it and things of that nature. It's kind of a cool community thing. So with that, I want to thank everybody for coming out, and Riverside was great. Next time I won't share the come on stage with me link. That was a fun little mistake, but I like this platform for doing live seminars. It's pretty cool. And this means I can turn on my fan because I'm sweating like a pig back here. But I appreciate everybody coming out. And if you're not part of the Podpage Facebook group, you should, because it's fun. Keep that in mind to join that. I was going to give you the link, but it's a fun thing. Facebook's always fun, but join that. And we will see you next month. If you ever have a topic, speaking of audience feedback, if you have a topic you would like discussed on the monthly meeting for Podpage users, and obviously we open this up to the public as well. Again, support at podpage.com, like, hey, why don't you guys do a monthly meetup and talk about blank? Because we've talked about interviews, we've talked about having your guests sound good. We've talked about how email may actually grow your show faster than um, that other thing, social media. Today, we talked about audience surveys. So if you ever have a topic that you would like discussed here, happy to hear those as well. But until we meet again, thank you again so much. And any feedback you can send to support@podpage.com. I'm Dave Jackson, head of podcasting here at Podpage, and we'll see you again real soon. Take care.